Step in my dojo, you
Step in my dojo, you
step in my.
So have found myself time and time again giving this same piece of advice to people. And if you are a weekly download subscriber, if you go back into the weekly downloads in Steve's training day, I address a lot of this problem that a lot of people have. And I address it somewhat in the Purple Cow, like sample digging episode of the weekly download. But basically, many producers get to a point where they're not really doing anything wrong, but they're also not really saying anything with their music, right? And basically, I mean, this happens to so many people. So if this happens, this is your problem. Don't feel bad. You know, it's not the worst thing in the world. But basically, often people will get to this point where they'll have a pretty good library. They know how to mix pretty well. They're fairly confident using different presets and VSTs and stuff. And they'll get to a point where they essentially have generated a pile of parts where nothing's really bad, but nothing really stands out, and nothing's really good either, right? And it'll feel like, it's like waiting for a vocal or waiting for a lead or waiting for something that really like makes it pop as a song. And, I have this saying that I say time and time again to people, which is, two accompaniment parts don't make a lead. Okay, it doesn't matter how fancy you get with your accompaniment parts. Like you could have them all like super checkerboarded and stuff, and like really kind of cool and like fancy accompaniment parts. But a lead has to be something that really grabs you, something that has an emotional impact to it. Okay, so in the other episode about the Purple Cow, I was recommending that you make the following folders on your hard drive. You have one called Sparks, right? And this is all things that have enough of an emotional impact that you're inspired and you want to like start writing music. Okay, so these could be. And like these categories are not mutually exclusive. Hey, what up, Zodiac? Yeah, I can see your comments coming in. This is cool. They're going live on the iPad. I'm going to do this more often. But yeah, so Spark is just something that's cool enough that you want to start a track from it. So it could be, maybe you're working on a track and you get this really cool melody that kind of doesn't really fit your track, but it's dope. Put it in the Sparks folder. Or you chop you have like some kind of cool loop, maybe from a sample archive. You're going through it and you're just like, oh, that's so cool. Like there's so much emotion in this. Or it could be a preset that you're just like, I love this preset, right? Hey, what up, Sean? Yo, actually, we gotta talk about your album really soon, man. We gotta talk. I'm gonna give you a call on the phone very soon. But yeah, we definitely gotta go over that. Okay, so the sparks are things that are like inspiring enough that you want to start a track from them, and they could also have a lot of personality to them, but basically they're things that are exciting and that could serve as could grow to become the central part in the song, right? So then there's also, hey, what up, nature? So then there's also a face, right? And the face, that's because in the ill methodology I talk about bottom-up songwriting and top-down songwriting, right? In bottom-up songwriting, you don't know what the central personality or the title or the main concept of the track is, and you just start writing and you jam until you get one idea that's like amazing, that you love, that you're like, oh, this is the face, this is like the main thing for the track, right? So that's, and that could be that's basically the title element of the track. Okay. So I also strongly encourage you to keep a big folder of faces. Okay. So this could be, elements that you want to remix, or it could be, single lines from a track. I mean, the classic face is to use like a single line from a vocal in a turnaround where it's like, you have a build up and then it's like, here's the title of the track, and then the bass drops. That's kind of like the classic way to do it. But this is something that's like, a lyric or a melody that is the main melody. So it could even just be a really simple preset. Like if you, the example that I always bring up in this of what a real lead melody is like that track Animals by Martin Garrix. Love it or hate it, that melody is really memorable, and it doesn't really sound like other tracks, or at least it didn't when it came out. Lots of people made copies of that track, but you can say, hey, have you heard that Martin Garrix track, the one that goes do 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 do, and you can like sing it or hum it to your friend, or like Sandstorm, or Higher State of Consciousness by Josh Wink, or Children by Robert Miles. They have a melody that you could describe either verbally or that you could easily sing that's memorable. Have a melody that you could describe either verbally or that you could easily sing that's memorable. Okay, so it could be a lyric or a melody or something, but it's something that you could express in conversation. Okay, so you need to also have a big folder of faces. Sometimes you start a track from a spark and you get to the face. Sometimes the spark is a face and you just start with a face, right? But then the third folder is the purple cow folder, and these are all sounds that are like crazy, that like you just don't get anywhere else, that are like really striking, really unusual, really have a lot of personality, and make you a holy shit, what's that? So when you're writing, it's very important to have all three of those folders just full of ammo, right? But when you're writing your track, you need to always be listening for what is the thing that is in the conversation? Like, is there, because basically, to most people, there's two elements in a track. There's the vocal and then there's everything else, right? But you can make a melody that has enough personality and enough character and enough like rule breaking and freedom of spirit that it serves as a lead and as a vocal, right? But always when you're writing, it's important to have those three folders, but to always be really thinking like, what am I saying with this song? What is the emotional communication that I'm communicating, and how can I say it as powerfully and often simply as possible, right? Because a lot of the time, when you're getting into music, you want to learn what all the synthesizers do. You want to get your archives together. You want to get your patches together. You want to learn how to, because everybody thinks their problem is mixing. And they're like, oh, if I just knew how to do a better mix down and get the subs and the drums sounding louder, then, my shit would be awesome. But 99% of the time, it's the fact that you're not writing with a clear emotional communication happening. The track is not actually saying anything except for, look what I can do with technology, which is not a very interesting message, and if someone else becomes more proficient with the same tools that you're using, then your track is irrelevant, right? But if you have like some kind of a central concept or some kind of a central emotion in every track, and let that kind of guide the structure of the track, and always have that thing as the central concept. So if you go back and like listen to my discography, you'll notice that each track has a very specific thing that it is, that is the face, that is the central message of the track, right? And if you go back and listen to them, you'll find that there's always something you could describe it as. Like you could say, hey, have you heard that new Ill.Gates track? Cthulhu, it's the one with the sample that's like counting and the Cthulhu sample. Or like, have you heard that new ill.gates track Bamboo with the lyrics are all about bamboo and the drums are all from plants? Or have you heard that track Flying with the vocals about flying? Or have you heard that track Egg Plantation? It's the one with the chopped up vocals and the fat electro bass. Or, Irma Vep, that hip hop track with Major One, or whatever. There's some kind of way you can describe that track. Or, Brooks Finest, that track Brain on Twist. Or like, Raindrops by Joker. Or just think of the tracks that you can name. Think of the tracks that really get in there, and that you'll find a lot of the time too, those tracks are some of the most addictive tracks, right? And you always need to pay attention to when that's not happening, and then you can go into your folders, or you can sit down and go like, okay, what are the kind of like rules, and how can I break a rule, right? And if you sit down and you're like, okay, let's really like, what are the rules happening here? A lot of the time, some of the rules that are, for example, are people make chord progressions where it's one chord for a bar, another chord for a bar, third chord for a bar, fourth chord for a bar. Every fucking time. Okay? And when you're generating your melodies based on a chord progression, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, and they all happen on the downbeats, and then you make your melody by taking those chords and feeding them into an arpeggiator. You'll get something that sounds kind of like a lead, but it doesn't stick in your head because there's so much rule following happening. There's so much, it's so predictable, right? Whereas if you have a chord progression that's all like ba ba na ba 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 da ba 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 ba, right? That is going to be a more interesting chord progression, and then the melodies that are going to be inspired by that, you can really like try and move things off of all the downbeats. Try and because an arpeggiator, right? A lot of people like to generate melodies with arpeggiators, but an arpeggiator generates a very regular sequence of notes where it's all like boop boop doop boop boop doop boop boop doop boop boop doop boop, which is cool if you're like trying to do like Stranger Things melody or whatever. Like it can be used effectively, and you can make like a strong central lead. The Stranger Things. I just watched the preview for the new season. I'm so excited. Central lead, the Stranger Things. I just watched the preview for the new season. I'm so excited. But the Stranger Things melody, for example, is like a very kind of, it's an example of rule following that where it is a phase, but it has like those sweet analog synths and the way it's constantly moving and stuff, like the filters are opening and moving on this thing, and it's like there's a little bit more to it than just like a preset with an arpeggiator, right? But arpeggiators, they generate these very predictable melodies, right? So if you think about like the melody for like Organ Grinder, right? DJ Shadow. It sounds kind of like an arpeggiator, but there's no arpeggiator pattern that is like thumb, pinky, ring, pinky, middle, pinky, index, pinky, thumb. Like that's not a pattern. That's not a preset that you get in our arpeggiator. Likewise, if you syncopate the melody, or like look at the melody for Animals, right, by Martin Garrix. When you analyze that melody, there's all these little rolls and stuff where it's like boom, ba ba da ba dum ba bum ba bum, ba ba da ba dum ba bum ba bum, ba ba da ba dum ba ba dum ba dum, and it has that like little bit of unpredictability to it. The rhythm is clumpy, it's syncopated, and just having like one simple melody over drums can be so powerful. It can be so powerful, and the tendency is to not make melodies that break any rules, and B, have just like a ton of these accompaniment parts in your track. And, you might have like a really straight up chord progression with a really straight up arpeggiator and then a really straight up lead on top. And you're like, why is this not memorable? Why is this not, it's like what's missing? And it's not that things are missing. It's just that there's not enough rule breaking going on. There's not a face being made. There's not like, those parts are just kind of holding space. They're not actually communicating anything. They're not actually saying anything. So really it's important to be bold, it's important to be playful, it's important to break the rules, and to have some kind of simple motif that can be expressed in conversation. So let's say your track is very atonal and it's just got bass sounds and stuff. Maybe there's like some kind of like, creaky door opening noise right before the drop, or like cats or something, but just make sure that there's always something that is very clearly what you're saying. So ask yourself, like, what am I saying? What's the face? How does friend 1 describe the track to friend 2, right? Because the conduit, like if any of you have been to the breakthrough, the conduit is a crucial part of the equation for you as a musician. And the conduit that's like the channel where you make and get fans, right? And that conduit is so important, right? Because the conduit works like this, and it's a conversation conduit, and this has basically happened. Think Seth Godin, watch his Purple Cow TED Talk, and remember that when you're thinking about the conduit. Okay, so friend 1 and friend 2 are hanging out and they're listening to music, and friend 1 goes to friend 2, hey, I like this piece of music. This is interesting. What is this? And then friend 2 says, well, that is, insert hopefully memorable artist name that is short, easy to remember, easy to spell, and gets you to a website or a social media account where there is some sort of present waiting for you as a fan, some kind of a bribe that you will accept in exchange for your email address or in exchange for clicking follow. Okay, that's the conduit. So that conversation has to happen. If your name is hard to spell, if it's in Latin, if it's in some weird inside joke, if it goes to social medias where someone else has your social medias already or somebody else has your .com, you're fucked. Okay, so that conduit is really, really important. And these tracks, your tracks should be able to be part of that conversation, so someone should be able to go like, have you heard that new Burial track, the one with that vocal that's like loving you, love it, or whatever, some sort of a describable thing, right? So what is it that you're saying? What you have to say it in an interesting way, but there also has to be something that you're saying. So ask yourself, like, what is each of these tracks saying? What are all these melodies saying? What is going to make that get in there and take a hold of the mind of your fan, right? Because later, after the conversation happens, that conversation that opens the conduit, right? They could talk about shit like 10, 20 different musicians, right? And then fan number 2 or friend number 2, they're sitting at their computer and they're like, hey, I want to listen to some music. What am I going to listen to? Their memory has to jog, right? And then they got to stick their hand into the raffle barrel and pull out your name.
It's like that.